Good Wednesday evening, listeners, and welcome to another edition of Conversations of a Sister here on YouTube. I'm your host, Miss Tracy L. Bell, and thank you for tuning in tonight. To those listeners who listen to my show, they've been asking me how come I got rid of my intro. And I think that I no longer do my intro because my show comes on differently. It's like as soon as I click that go live button, I'm on live. So it's not necessary for me to do an intro. But sometimes I play it just to kind of set the tone and before I go on the air, just for those of you who may have asked about it. So for those of you who are tuning in tonight, I thank you for tuning in for tonight's conversation. I did see some of the comments on my blog before I got on live, and that is correct. I no longer talk about the show before the show because a lot of my listeners, I notice they prefer to go to the blog and have the conversation instead of tuning in live. It's fine. It's whatever your preference is. And I guess they do it for conversation and to talk amongst each other. I don't know. But whatever it is, I thank you for tuning in. I appreciate the fact that you're here. But, in order to find out what the week's topic is, you won't know until you come here because I no longer post it live prior to the show. So that means that all the conversations happen after I have the initial conversation. So now that I've set the tone for tonight's conversation, I thank you for tuning in. And tonight's conversation is, how is your relationship? How is your relationships with money, that is? How is your relationship, and especially your relationship with money? People don't understand that when we talk about relationships, uh, that is a word all by itself because it covers so many things in its totality. And I think it's because one's financial compatibility will determine what their relationships are like. Why is that? Because finances can and will affect a relationship. I remember when I was first thinking about getting my own apartment. I was going to get my own apartment with this best friend of mine at the time. And everything we did fell through. Everything we did fell through. And when it was time for us to actually put money down on the apartment, she would always spend her half or not have her half. And I remember at the time, my pastor said to me, he said, everything falls through. This is a sign that you should not take the apartment with her. And I was like, but why? He was like, because she's not good with finances. He said, and what will happen is you will get an apartment with her, you'll share an apartment with her, and when she can't pay her half of the rent, it is going to bring on a strain within your friendship. So if you want to test your friendship, all you have to do, or your relationships, all you have to do is make it about money. Your relationship with money will determine your relationships. Oh, trust and believe me when I tell you, they will either go south or they will either meet at that person's level, but they will determine your relationships. So, financial compatibility is all about understanding each other's or one's habits, one's debt, one's savings goal, and one's spending. So, let's say, for example, if you're in a relationship with someone and they have very bad spending habits, and you don't, let's say you don't have bad spending habits, but they do, right? So, because their spending habits are bad, they will forever lean on you or depend on you to lean on. And the moment you stop them from leaning on you, they're going to switch up on you and the relationship. Oh, trust me, the dynamics in the relationship will change. And why is that? It is because that individual does not have a good relationship with money. And all you have to do is listen. All you have to do is listen to the person. And when you listen to them, you're going to hear it. Just like if a woman, let's make it simple. Just like if a woman had a good man, she wouldn't necessarily brag about it. She might throw a hint here, a hint there that her man is good. I used to work with a girl. She used to talk about how her husband would leave her $20 every day in the car, basically like $100 a week for lunch, and she was like happy about it, because that was their thing. He would leave her money and she was like happy about it. She was happy about that relationship. So it's the same thing concerning money. So let's say your significant other or your friend is having money issues. They're going to talk about it. And they're not going to talk about it in a fun, loving way. They're going to talk about it in a miserable way. And when they talk about it in a miserable way, that's going to make you miserable. So some people, if it makes them miserable, they be like, oh, forget it. Let me just loan them the money. And they think that by loaning them the money, that solves the problem. But it does not. All it does is enable them for the next time. Because trust and believe, they will keep coming back until you say no. And that is because they don't have a good relationship with their finances. But you do, or you might. So if you do and they don't, it's going to put a damper on your relationship. Why? Because you're not aligned. And when you're not aligned financially, you're not going to be aligned anywhere else. You're just not. And if you have a partner and they're having like money issues and you may not know it or they keep it to themselves, you're going to know by their attitude because their attitude is automatically going to change. It's going to change. And then the minute you say, well, what's wrong with you? Or what's the matter? They may open the door and tell you, or they may not. But what you will see and what you will notice is their relationship with money. Because if they don't have it, that means the relationship is not good. And if the relationship is not good, then that's going to affect you. Money is an important factor because it directly affects your future, whether alone or even with someone. It affects your future. I think, or I can say, that money causes stress in not only the individual, but also in relationships. So I know a guy who told me that he was talking to his girlfriend on the phone and she was in the supermarket and he asked her to pick up a couple of things for him. She said, no, I only have enough money to get what I need. So he was like, all right. But he felt some kind of way about that, right? So I think it was maybe a week later or a week or two later, she had asked him to borrow $50. And he said, or he told her that he didn't have it. And she stopped talking to him. So do you see what I mean about money and how money can affect a relationship? I think that the biggest red flag for me in a relationship is when that individual don't want to talk about money. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about money. See, I'm the type of individual, if you keep complaining about money and talking about money, that means you're waiting for me to open the door to give you a resolve. And a lot of people think that that resolve is giving them money. And that That's not the resolve. The resolve is delving into the fact as to why they don't have money. My ex-boyfriend that I was dealing with, he, I'll never forget this. He had just made money from something. I can't remember what it was, but he had just made money. And, you know, I guess he was glad to be happy, whatever. And what I couldn't understand was, I think it was the following week, he had asked me to loan him money to take his car for oil change. I just need you to loan me money so that I could get an oil change in my car. And I said to him, are you kidding? You just did XYZ and made EFG, and you're asking me to loan you money to get an oil change in your car? He blew up and stopped talking to me for weeks. Do you see what I mean when I say that money affects relationships? Because see, it will not only affect your relationship with the individual, but it will affect the relationship between the individual and the money because they don't have it. So it's like, all right, if you don't have it, then you're not friends with your money because you don't know how to manage it. It's just like a relationship. How do you manage and maintain a relationship? You do things together, you preserve each other, you keep it alive. It's the same thing with money. It's no different. You have to make money your friend. I remember a couple of years ago, I had a conversation with one of my nieces, and she had very bad spending habits. And I could tell because my brother had bad spending habits. And she was brave enough to talk to me about it. And when you have people who don't want to talk about it, that means that they don't want to learn and they don't want to do better. Listen, you have people that are 70, 80, 90, 100 years old who don't know how to handle their money. I remember my girlfriend keep talking about how Cardi B said, they didn't teach finances in school. Otherwise, she'd be managing her own money. But because they didn't teach finances in school, she has to hire an accountant to manage her money. You have to know how to have a good relationship with your money because the relationship with your money is going to affect all of your relationships. And when you have a relationship with your money and when you have a relationship with your finances, you are going to be able to hear a potential partner's relationship with theirs as well. And if it does not align with yours, then that's a red flag. If they are not willing to learn, then that's a red flag. If they are not willing to listen, then that's a red flag. If they don't want to talk about it, then that's a red flag. You want to know why it's a red flag? Because you're going to go and you're going to enter into a marriage and you are going to be shocked at how and what that individual do with their money, how they manage their finances. My oldest brother, God rest his soul, he was a stickler about money, right? So he was dealing with a woman who would borrow money for him every week. Every week she brought money. If it wasn't every week, it was every 2 weeks. It was like he was a regular ATM for her. And I said to him, you know you can't marry her, right? He was like, oh, hell no. I know I can't marry her. Oh, no. I was like, and I know he cared about her. I was like, you know you can't marry her, right? He was like, oh, hell no. I know how she'll treat my money. And I could tell that he was thinking about it. I know that he was thinking about marrying her because he called me up. I'll never forget this. He called me up and he said to me, yo, he said, I had a dream last night that his girlfriend was down in a ditch. He said she was in a ditch and she was counting all these pennies. And he said he was laying up top in the bed. And he said he woke up. He said he looked down at her and said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Oh, I'm down in this ditch counting pennies. I need you to get down here and count with me." He said, "Oh, hell no." He said it was like a nightmare for him. And he woke up. And I said, "See, God is warning you about her spending habits. These are her spending habits. She has very bad spending habits. And if they are bad with their money, they will be even worse with yours. Because someone who is not smart with their finances will run you in a hole. Why? Because you'll see what their spending habits are. All you have to do is watch their spending habits. If they're like, "I'm buying this, I'm buying that, I'm buying this, I'm buying that, I don't have money for this, I have no money to save, I have no money in savings, I'm living hand to foot, foot to mouth, paycheck to paycheck," those are all red flags. Now, for those of you who are thinking, "Oh, but I only make," that's the worst thing to say. "I only make." That is the worst thing to say. The worst thing to say is, "I only make." Because what you're saying is that because I only make a little, I have to spend it all. And that is not the case. And that is not where we start. When you only make, what that means is you do not live above your means. And I'll never forget when my father told me this. He said, "You never, ever," it was the way he said it. I think that's why I really didn't understand him. Well, my mind couldn't comprehend it. But he said to me, "You never, ever spend more than you make, or your outtake shouldn't be more than your intake, or your intake shouldn't be more than your outtake." He said it has to be balanced out. That's what he said to me. So what I would do was I would start every week, I would put together a spreadsheet. At the top of that spreadsheet would be the total of what I made. And then in my spreadsheet would be what I had to pay out. And then I would total that spreadsheet up based upon what I made, see what I had left, and make a decision. Are you going to spend it all? Or are you going to save it based upon what you have to do? And you got to think about what you have to do. If you got a car, that means you may have a car payment. And if you don't have a car payment, you're going to need gas that's going to carry you through. You're going to need an oil change. And what about that just in case money? Because you got to think about the just in case. Because there are a lot of just in cases. Because you just don't know. That's the money that you put aside. And sometimes it comes with sacrifices. But there's sacrifices that are well put. Because at the end of the day, you only can depend on you. And you want to be able to depend on you. Now, if you and your partner can grow together, that's wonderful. If you and your partner can understand each other, that's great. If you and your partner together can have an excellent relationship with money, that's a plus. But when you cannot, that is going to be a big fat minus. Because first of all, when he or she has a problem, their attitude is going to change toward you. And I don't know about y'all, but when somebody's attitude changed toward me about money, that pisses me off. And the last thing I'm going to do is fight and argue about money. It's not going to happen. And some people who can't fathom the fact that you know how to manage it and you know how to save it and you know how to invest it, they can't fathom that. When my brother passed away, God rest his soul, I became executor of his estate, and I took certain finances and I put it away for my nephews. I gave them a certain amount, and a certain amount I put away. And my one nephew, who is bad with finances, kept bugging me about the money. And I was like, "No, I put it away. I'm going to put it away a little bit and let it gather some interest. And then at a certain age, I'll divvy those finances out." He didn't like that. He started talking about me. People will talk about me, especially when you're managing someone's finances. And when you're managing those finances right, they will talk about you. They will say anything. And what they're saying and what they're thinking is who they are, because they can't fathom doing it so they can't fathom anyone else doing it. But that is the key to having a great relationship with money, is knowing and learning how to manage it. You have to make money your friend. Because when you are friends with money, that is one friend that will be able to back you up because you've made friends with it. You've nurtured that friendship. You've built on that friendship. And that friendship becomes your cushion just in case you need to fall back on it. That's what it is. And if you decide to hook up and get married, just remember that I think it says in recent studies, it showed that financial challenges are some of the leading causes of breakups in marriages and relationships. That is ever so true because you have to be determined that money is not going to dictate to you. You're not. And you can't be scared to have the conversation. It's a hard conversation for some people to have, but you have to have the conversation. The conversation is crucial because if you don't have the conversation, how are you going to know if a person is financially fit? How? I have one male friend. He he got it together. I mean, he worked hard. Um, he saved money. He's invested. He's done quite well financially. And that's because he's been smart about his finances. And that's not something that he's afraid to talk about. He's very open about what he's doing once he retires and the money that he has saved. He's very, very savvy when it comes to his finances. That's a real turn on when you have somebody that's on point with their finances. I know it is for me, you know, in this day and age. You don't want to be talking to somebody who is just like, they don't know like what's next. You don't want to do that. I think that finances will directly affect your future. They will. They will affect your future. If your partner is determined to be broke, you'll be broke. If your partner is determined to spend, you'll be broke because there's a time and a season for everything. There's a time to save, there's a time to spend, there's a time to laugh, there's a time to cry. But you will be broke. You will. And for those of you who are in dating relationships, you better talk about finances now, especially if it's serious. How do they hold up in finances? What are they like with finances? Are they honest? Are they saying to you, baby, we can't go out to eat this week? I know you like to go out to eat, but this week we got to hold off because I'm saving. Well, if we go out to eat, we're going to eat here instead of here because it's a little bit more affordable. We'll splurge next month or next week. And then maybe you're dealing with someone, doesn't matter because they can handle it. Either way, you need to know where they stand with finances, just like they need to know where you stand with finances. I remember my brother told me he was dating this girl who loved to go on vacation. She loved to vacation. And he thought it was great. He thought nothing of it. Oh, well, he said, she lost the vacation. But I think he said he took her home and she had no lights. Her lights were out in her apartment. There was no food in the refrigerator. So for him, he was like, somebody's priorities are kind of messed up. Because you have some people who will risk it all just for the ball, or will risk it all just to have a ball. So what kind of person are you? What is your relationship like? Is it healthy or is it staggering? There's always time to get it right. So if you want to get it right, the time is now. And if you're in a relationship with someone and you think that it'll go to the next level. Have that talk about finances. That is crucial. How do they act when they're broke? What can they depend on when they're broke? What do they talk about when they're broke? What is their attitude like when they have no money? Because I'm telling you, money affects people. Money affects their attitude. Money will determine the outcome. Money always does. When you talk to them and they are broke, do they have an attitude? Do they snap at you? Is that what they do? Because if they do, that needs to be dealt with. What are they like? What is that season like? That's something that you need to know. And if they are going through something, do you know at all? Is that something they keep to themselves? Is it something they handle on their own? All of these things determine their relationship with money. All of these things will tell you what their relationships are like with money. What is your relationship like with your finances? Are you financially fit? And if you are not, then you are not ready to take on the responsibility of a wife or a husband. And for those of you who think, well, she don't have to have a lot of money, that's fine. But how does she handle it? She may not have to have money, but how will she handle yours? Because see, the Bible says, if you are faithful over a few things, I'll make you ruler over many. So if she's faithful over her small finances, how will she be with your big ones? That's important. Handling money is handling money. Whether it's 20,000 or 20 million, you still have to handle it. How will it be handled? Well, that will be determined by their relationship with money. So whether you're up the scale or down the scale, it doesn't matter. Your relationship is what's important. And it is important to be financially fit because it will affect your future, whether it affects your future alone or your future with someone. Your future alone will be what's coming up down the line. What will it be like when I retire? What will I be able to maintain when I retire? I have one friend already talking about he gonna get his CDL license and he gonna drive a school bus. Not that he needs to, but it's just to keep him busy, and a little income coming in. So people are thinking long term when it comes to their finances, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing because they're becoming financially fit. So whether you're going to be with a partner or whether you're going to do it alone, it is crucial to be financially fit. And you want to make sure that you are able to maintain your relationships going forward because that is crucial as well. And if you are financially fit in your single life, you will know how to determine if your partner is equally compatible with you on that level. And you want to know sooner than later. Please, please don't get into your I do's before you find out what their do's and don'ts are when it comes down to finances. Trust me, you'll thank me later. I thank you for tuning in tonight. For those listeners who requested the show, I'm so glad that my last show, Preparing for Marriage, was able to catapult you into this conversation tonight because that means that some of you are ready to take that dive into maybe marriage, engagement, a serious commitment. But I'm glad that you're thinking about your finances first because that's important. It is important. Finances are important. What is the relationship like? What is it like when it's up? And what is it like when it's down? Because no matter what, you have to be financially fit, especially to weather the storm. And when you come out of one storm, it will prepare you for the next. And it will teach you how to navigate in that boat. So for those of you who requested tonight's conversation, keep it. Keep it on a rewind. And as a remind that finances and financials is a crucial part of any conversation when we're thinking long term. Until next week, have a good night. Bye.